Due to performing different types of yagyas, one can actually be promoted to higher planetary systems or to the heavenly kingdoms by performing various yagyas. But there is no question of liberation or going back home, back to Godhead. When the great sage Narada saw that a descendant of Maharaj Dhruva was being misled by fruitive activities, Narada took compassion upon him and personally came to instruct him about the ultimate benediction of life, bhakti yoga. How Narada Muni indirectly introduced the bhakti yoga system to King Parsinabharisat is very interestingly described in this 25th chapter. Oh, that's what we're reading now. Canto 4, chapter 25. Text number 2. All the Praseta princes simply stood in the water for 10,000 years and recited the prayers given to them by Lord Shiva. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Of course, in the modern age, one may be amazed how the princess could stand in the water for 10,000 years. However, living within air or living within water is the same process. One simply has to learn how to do it. The aquatics live within water for their whole lifespan. Certain favorable conditions are created to enable them to live within water. In those days, however, people used to live for 100,000 years. Out of so many years, if one could spare 10,000 years for the sake of austerity, he would be assured of success in his future life. This was not very astonishing. Although such a feat is impossible in this age, it was quite possible in Satya Yuga. Text number 3. While the princes were undergoing severe austerities in the water, their father was performing different types of fruitive activities. At this time, the great saint Narada, master and teacher of all spiritual life, became very compassionate upon the king and decided to instruct him about spiritual life. That's very good. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As pointed out by Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur, a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya, Kaivalya, or merging into the Brahman effulgence, is just like going to hell. He similarly states that elevation to the upper planetary systems for the enjoyment of heavenly life is just so much phantasmagoria, in other words, illusion. This means that a devotee does not give any importance to the ultimate goal of the karmis and jnanis. The ultimate goal of the karmis is promotion to the heavenly kingdom. And the ultimate goal of the jnanis is merging into the Brahman effulgence. Of course, the jnanis are superior to the karmis, as confirmed by Lord Chaitanya. Koti karmanista madhye eka jnani shrestha. One jnani or impersonalist is better than many thousands of fruitive actors. And that's from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 19.147. Therefore, a devotee never enters upon the path of karma or elevation by fruitive activities. Narada Muni took compassion upon King Parsinabharisat when he saw the king engaged in fruitive activity. In comparison to mundane workers, Those who are trying to be elevated to the higher planetary systems by performing yajnas are undoubtedly superior. In pure devotional service, however, both karma and jnana are considered bewildering features of the illusory energy. Text number 4. Narada Muni asked King Parsenabhadisat, "My dear king, what do you desire to achieve by performing these fruitive activities?" The chief aim of life is to get rid of all miseries and enjoy happiness. But these two things cannot be realized by fruitive activity. Oh, that's good advice. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this material world, there is a great illusion which covers real intelligence. A man in the mode of passion wants to work very hard to derive some benefit, but he does not know that time will never allow him to enjoy anything permanently. Compared with the work one expends, the gain is not so profitable. Even if it is profitable, it is not without its distresses. If a man is not born rich and he wants to produce a house, cars, and other material things, uh, he has to work hard day and night for many years in order to possess them. Thus, happiness is not attained without undergoing some distress. Actually, pure happiness cannot be had within the material world. If we wish to enjoy something, we must suffer for something else. On the whole, suffering is the nature of this material world. Whatever enjoyment we are trying to achieve is simply illusion. After all, we have to suffer the miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. We may discover many fine medicines, but it is not possible to stop the sufferings of disease or death. Actually, medicine is not the counteracting agent for either disease or death. On the whole, there is no happiness in this material world, but an illusion person works very hard for so-called happiness. Indeed, this process of working hard is actually taken for happiness. This is called illusion. Therefore, Narada Muni asked King Parsenabhadisat what he desired to attain by performing so many costly sacrifices. Even if one attains a heavenly planet, he cannot avoid the distresses of birth, old age, disease, and death. Someone may argue that even devotees have to undergo many distresses in executing austerities and penances connected with devotional service. Of course, for the neophytes, the routine of devotional service may be very painful, but at least they have the hope that they will ultimately be able to avoid all kinds of distresses and achieve the highest perfection stage of happiness. For the common karmis, there is no such hope because even if they are promoted to the higher planetary systems, they are not guaranteed freedom from the miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. Even Lord Brahma, who is situated in the highest planetary system, Brahmaloka, has to die. Lord Brahma's birth and death may be different from an ordinary man's, but within this material world, he cannot avoid the distresses of birth, old age, disease, and death. If one is at all serious about attaining liberation from these miseries, he must take to devotional service. This is confirmed by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita 4.9. Janmakarma chame divyam evam yo veti tatpata tatpadeham punarjanma naitimam eti sarjana. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Thus, after attaining full Krishna consciousness, the devotee does not return to this material world after death. He goes back home, back to Godhead. That is the perfect stage of happiness, unblemished by any trace of distress. Text number 5. The king replied, O great soul, Narada, my intelligence is entangled in fruitive activities. Therefore, I do not know the ultimate goal of life. Kindly instruct me in pure knowledge so that I can get out of the entanglement of fruitive activities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Shri Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Satsanga Chadi Kainu Asate Vilasa, Te Karane Lagila Ye Karma Bandafansa. As long as a person is entangled in fruitive activities, he is bound to accept one body after another. This is called karma bandha fansa. Entanglement in fruitive activities. It does not matter whether one is engaged in pious or impious activities, for both are causes for further entanglement in material bodies. By pious activities, one can take birth in a rich family and get a good education and a beautiful body. But this does not mean that the distresses of life are ultimately eliminated. In the Western countries, it is not unusual for one to take birth in a rich, aristocratic family, nor is it unusual for one to have a good education and a very beautiful body. But this does not mean that Westerners are free from distresses of life. Although at the present moment, the younger generation in Western countries has sufficient education, beauty, and wealth, and although there is enough food, clothing, and facilities for sense gratification, they are in distress. Indeed, they are so distressed that they become hippies, and the laws of nature force them to accept a wretched life. Thus, they go about unclean and without shelter or food, and they are forced to sleep in the streets. It can be concluded that one cannot become happy by simply performing pious activities. Very profound statement. It is not a fact that those who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, that's a nice saying that means that one is born in a very prominent family and has all, let's say, it's always has plenty of money and education and so forth. Those who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth are free from the material miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. So that's why it says, it is not a fact that those who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth are free from material miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. The conclusion is that one cannot be happy by simply executing pious or impious activities. Such activities simply cause entanglement and transmigration from one body to another. Narottam Das Thakura calls this karma bandha fansa. King Parsinabharisat admitted this fact and frankly asked Narada Muni how he could get out of this karma bandha pansa, entanglement in fruitive activities. This is actually the stage of knowledge indicated in the first verse of, uh, of Vedanta Sutra, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. When one actually reaches the platform of frustration in an attempt to discharge karma bandha phansa, he inquires about the real value of life, which is called Brahma Jignasa. In order to inquire about the ultimate goal of life, the Vedas, Mukunda, I'm sorry, the Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 11.2.12 enjoin, Tad Vigyanartam Sagurum Eva Vigachet. In order to understand the transcendental science, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. King Parsitabharisat found the best spiritual master, Narada Muni, and he therefore asked him about that knowledge by which one can get out of the entanglement of karma, bandha, phansa, fruitive activities. This is the actual business of human life. Jivasya tattva jignasa narto yasjeha karma be. As stated in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.10, a human being's only business is inquiring from a bona fide spiritual master about extrication from the entanglement of karma, bandha, phansa. Okay, so this entanglement that we are in due to being enamored by sense gratification and engaging in activities for being so-called happy, that actually it just keeps us a prisoner in the material world, has to be understood and given up. So at a certain point, one gives up all efforts for sense gratification and becomes very serious about practicing Krishna consciousness without any desire for sense gratification. Okay. In order to understand transcendental science, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. That's a very important statement. King Parshvanatha found the best spiritual master, Narada Muni, and he therefore asked him about that knowledge by which one can get out of the entanglement of karma, bandha, phansa, fruitive activities. This is the actual business of human life. Jiva Sitatva Jignasa Narto Yas Cheha Karma Be. As stated in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.10, a human being's only business is inquiring from a bona fide spiritual master about extrication from the entanglement of karma, bandha, phansa. Okay, very good. Karma means activity, bandha means entanglement, and phansa means the extrication from the entanglement. Text 6. Those who are interested only in so-called beautiful life, namely remaining as a householder entangled by sons and a wife and searching after wealth, think that such things are life's ultimate goal. Such people simply wander in different types of bodies throughout this material existence without finding out the ultimate goal of life. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who are too much attached to family life, which consists of entanglement with wife, children, wealth, and home, are engaged in kuta dharma, pseudo duties, false duties. Prahlad Maharaj has likened these pseudo occupational duties to a dark well, andakupam. Prahlada has profusely spoken of this dark well because if one falls into this well, it will die. He may cry for help, but no one will hear him or come to rescue him. The words Brahmyan Samsara Vartmasu are significant. And Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 19:151, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very clearly explains, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagavan Bhagyavan Jiva. All living entities are wandering in different types of bodies throughout different planets. And if, in the course of their wanderings, they come in contact with a devotee by the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, their lives become successful. Even though King Parshana Bodhisattva was engaged in fruitive activity, the great sage Narada appeared before him. The king was very fortunate to be able to associate with Narada, who enlightened him in spiritual knowledge. It is the duty of all saintly persons to follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni and travel all over the world to every country and village just to instruct illusioned persons about the goal of life and to save them from the entanglement of karma bandha, karma bandha, or activities that are binding one to stay in the material world, or in other words, fruitive activity. Fruitive activity. The word fruitive is made up by Prabhupada. It's not in the dictionary. It may be now because Prabhupada has been using this word. Fruitive activity means activities meant for sense gratification. People want to enjoy the fruit of activity, and that is the life of a karmi, of a materialist who's interested in sense gratification. Okay, text number 7. The great sage Narada says, O ruler of the citizens, my dear king, please see in the sky those animals which you have sacrificed without compassion and without mercy in the sacrificial arena. Oh my God, I hate to be in a position like that. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Because animal sacrifice is recommended in the Vedas, there are animal sacrifices in almost all religious rituals. However, one should not be satisfied simply by killing animals according to the directions of the scriptures. One should transcend the ritualistic ceremonies and try to understand the actual truth, the purpose of life. Narada Muni wanted to instruct the king about the real purpose of life and invoke a spirit of renunciation in his heart. And that's not very, very nice. That's very nice. Knowledge and the spirit of renunciation, jnana vairagya, are the ultimate goal of life. Without knowledge, one cannot become detached from material enjoyment. And without being detached from material enjoyment, one cannot make spiritual advancement. Karmis are generally engaged in sense I'm sorry, karmis, uh, let's see. Narada Muni wanted to instruct the king about the real purpose of life and invoke a spirit of renunciation in his heart. Knowledge and the spirit of renunciation, jnana vairagya, are the ultimate goal of life. Without knowledge, one cannot become detached from material enjoyment. And without being detached from material enjoyment, one cannot make spiritual advancement. Karmis are generally engaged in sense gratification, and for this end, they are prepared to commit so many sinful activities. Animal sacrifice is but one such sinful activity. Consequently, by his mystic power, Narada Muni showed King Parsenabharisat the dead animals which he had sacrificed. Oh my God, what a horrible thing to see. Well, we have it today. I mean, you have the celebration of Thanksgiving. It sounds like something spiritual, giving thanks to God. But what is Thanksgiving? It's turned into a massive slaughter of animals to be eaten by unholy people. So there's nothing spiritual about that. And where is this Thanksgiving? In other words, the whole thing is a hoax. The whole thing is just a big orgy of sense gratification by materialistic people. So it says here, without knowledge, one cannot become detached from material enjoyment. And without being detached from material enjoyment, one cannot make spiritual advancement. Karmis are generally engaged in sense gratification, and for this end, they are prepared to commit so many sinful activities. Animal sacrifice is but one such sinful activity. Consequently, by his mystic power, Narada Muni showed King Parsenabharisat the dead animals which he had sacrificed. Oh my God. You know, see how horrible that is. They're doing these animal sacrifices thinking that it's spiritual and it's pleasing to the Lord. But actually, the whole thing is nonsense and not at all pleasing to the Lord. So when in modern times people have Thanksgivings where they kill hundreds and thousands of animals, you know, turkeys and uh, different animals are killed on Thanksgiving. So where's the Thanksgiving? They're thanking God by committing the sinful activities of killing innocent animals. There's no Thanksgiving there. The whole thing is a hoax, and it's all based on sense gratification.
Approximately 620 million turkeys are slaughtered globally.
Oh, wow. 600, 620 million.
Across the world, and then specifically on Thanksgiving, about 46 million.
So 600,
20 million turkeys. This is just turkeys.
Oh, just turkeys. Okay, 600 million turkeys.
Mhm.
Well, here you see what's called a gigantic aberration from spiritual life. People think that the more animals you sacrifice on Thanksgiving, the better it is. But actually, that's a big, big mistake. And it's not only Hindus; it is also the uh, also other different so-called religious organizations are engaged in this animal sacrifice, massive animal sacrifice, thinking that God is pleased by all the animals that are killed and eaten. Just imagine that. It's unbelievable. The Muslims, when their uh, uh, holy days, they kill hundreds and sometimes millions of animals and eat them. And they consider that to be a holy activity. And they think that the more animals they kill, the more God is pleased. That's completely wrong. However, that's why there's so much suffering in the world today, because people are misled by false so called prophets. And they are engaged in sinful activities in the name of religion. Sinful activities in the name of religion. Okay, so now text number 8. All these animals are awaiting your death. All the animals that have been sacrificed are awaiting the death of King, what is it, Parsonage?
Wow.
All right. So that they can avenge the injuries you have inflicted upon them.
Wow.
After you die, they will angrily pierce your body with iron horns. Oh my God. Hey, all the people that eat turkeys on Thanksgiving,
I
this is
think
what they're gonna
this
experience.
is the chapter we need to make people read.
Yeah,
What happens?
definitely. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Narada Muni wanted to draw King Parsena Bodhisattva's attention to the excesses of killing animals in sacrifice. It is said in the Shastras that by killing animals in sacrifice, one immediately promotes them to human birth. Similarly, by killing their enemies on a battlefield, the Kshatriyas who fight for a right cause are elevated to the heavenly planets after death. In Manu Samhita, it is stated that it is necessary for a king to execute a murderer, so that the murderer will not suffer for his criminal actions in his next life. Ah, oh, here is the best argument for capital punishment. So, nowadays, nobody wants to have capital punishment for murderers, but they should definitely be killed for their criminal actions so that they don't suffer in the next life for the criminal actions that they've performed. On the basis of such understanding, Narada Muni warns the king that the animals killed in sacrifices by the king await him at his death in order to avenge themselves. Oh my God. Narada Muni is, just imagine all the uh, Thanksgiving turkeys that are killed and eaten, supposedly as some type of a spiritual festival. It's not spiritual at all. And all that's going to happen is when people die, all those turkeys that they killed will be there
Mhm.
ready to avenge themselves for that suffering that they have caused. Narada Muni is not contradicting himself here. Narada Muni wanted to convince the king that overindulgence in animal sacrifice is risky because as soon as there is a small discrepancy in the execution of such a sacrifice, the slaughtered animal may not be promoted to a human form of life. Consequently, the person performing the sacrifice will be responsible for the death of the animal, just as much as a murderer is responsible for killing another man. When animals are killed in a slaughterhouse, 6 people connected with the killing are responsible for the murder. Whoa. The person who gives permission for the killing, the person who kills, the person who helps, the person who purchases the meat, the person who cooks the flesh, and the person who eats it all become entangled in the killing. Narada Muni wanted to draw the king's attention to this fact. Wow, it's very important. Thus, animal killing is not encouraged even in a sacrifice. Well, there you are, my dear devotees. Don't engage in killing animals as a false concept of spiritual sacrifice.
Mhm.
Actually, today, whenever there is a festival such as uh, Thanksgiving, right? Oh, they kill so many animals and eat them, and they call that a spiritual feast. There's nothing spiritual about it. It's a slaughter of innocent animals to satisfy the palate of nonsense people. In this connection, I wish to narrate an old history connected with the character of a king called Puranjana. Please try to hear me with great attention. The great sage Narada turned toward another topic, the history of King Puranjana. This is nothing but the history of King Parsina Bodhisattva, told in a different way. In other words, this is an allegorical presentation. Okay, so something that's allegorical is a history that helps us understand what's going on now.
Mhm.
But it's done in a allegorical way by explaining a history that's may have taken place or is simply made up to help us understand what's going on now. The word Puranjana means one who enjoys in a body. This clearly explained in the next few chapters. This clearly explained in the next few chapters. Because a person entangled in material activities wants to hear stories of material activities, Narada Muni turned to the topics of King Puranjana, who is none other than King Parsena Bodhisattva. Narada Muni did not directly deprecate the value of performing sacrifices in which animals are sacrificed. Lord Buddha, however, directly rejected all animal sacrifices. Srila Jayadev Goswami has stated, Nindasi yagna vider ahaha shruti jatam The word Shruti Jatam indicates that in the Vedas, animal sacrifice is recommended, but Lord Buddha directly denied the Vedic authority in order to stop animal sacrifice. Consequently, Lord Buddha is not accepted by the followers of the Vedas because he does not accept the authority of the Vedas. Lord Buddha is depicted as an agnostic or atheist. The great sage Narada cannot decry the authority of the Vedas. In other words, he cannot decry, uh, he cannot ignore the authority of the Vedas. But he wanted to indicate to King Prashanabharisat that the path of karma kanda is very difficult and risky. That is the truth. Foolish persons accept the difficult path of karma kanda for the sake of sense enjoyment. And those who are too much attached to sense enjoyment are called mudhas, rascals. It is very difficult for a mudha or a rascal to understand the ultimate goal of life. In the propagation of the Krishna consciousness movement, we actually see that many people are not attracted because they are mudhas, engaged in fruitive activity. It is said, Upadesho hi murkanam prakopaya nasantaye. If good instructions are given to a foolish rascal, he simply becomes angry and turns against the instructions instead of taking advantage of them. Oh, that's very true. Very, very true. I experienced that in my own family. Because Narada Muni knew this very well, he indirectly instructed the king by giving him the history of his entire life. In order to wear a gold or diamond nose pin or earring, one has to pierce the ear or nose. Such pain endured for the sake of sense gratification is endured on a path of karma kanda, the path of fruitive activity. Well, there's so many women and men also that pierce their ears and their nose, sometimes their eyebrows. And it's very painful actually, but they do it as some kind of sense gratification. If one wishes to enjoy something in the future, he has to endure trouble in the present. If one wants to become a millionaire in the future and enjoy his riches, he has to work very hard at the present moment in order to accumulate money. This is karma kandiya. Those who are too much attached to such a path undergo the risk anyway. Narada Muni wanted to show King Prashanabharisat how one undergoes great troubles and miseries in order to engage in fruitive activity. A person who is very much attached to material activity is called Vishayi. A Vishayi is an enjoyer of Vishaya, which means eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Narada Muni is indirectly indicating through the story of King Puranjana that eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are troublesome and risky. Well, eating what? Eating nonsense things, or overeating, also, oversleeping, overmating, meaning having sex, and defending are troublesome and risky. The words itihasam, history, and puratanam, old, indicate that although a living entity lives within the material body, the history of the living entity within the material body is very old. In this regard, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's son, Anadi Karma Phale Padi Bhavarnava Jale Taribarina Deki Upaya. Due to my past fruitive activities, I have fallen into the water of material existence. I cannot find any way to get out of it. Every living entity is suffering in this material existence from past activities. Therefore, everyone has a very old history. Foolish material scientists have manufactured their own theories of evolution, which are simply concerned with the material body. But actually, this is not the real evolution. The real evolution is the history of the living entity who is Puranjana, living within the body. Shinarda Muni will explain this evolutionary theory in a different way for the understanding of sane persons. Ah, very interesting. Yeah, so the Itihasam, or history, and Puratanam, old, indicates that although a living entity lives within the material body, the history of the living entity within the material body is very old. Yeah, we've been in many bodies. But when we use the body in the service of Krishna, we become free from all this, uh, let's say, karma from previous lives. That's very important. That's real knowledge, to become karma free. But people who just merely go along in ignorance and have performed karma in the past time and they're continuing to perform karma in the present are just getting more and more entangled. And therefore, Prabhupada says, if one wishes to enjoy something in the future, he has to endure trouble in the present. If one wants to become a millionaire in the future and enjoy his riches, he has to work very hard at the present moment in order to accumulate money. This is karma kanda, or the entanglement of karma. Those who are too much attached to such a path undergo the risk anyway. It's just like a snake that has a diamond on its forehead, right? So some people will take the risk of trying to grab that diamond, even though they risk being bitten by the snake and killed. Narada Muni wanted to show King Parsenabharasa how one undergoes great troubles and miseries in order to engage in fruitive activity. A person who is very much attached to material activity is called Vishayi. A Vishayi is an enjoyer of Vishaya, which means eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Narada Muni is indirectly indicating that the story of King Puranjan, that eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are troublesome and risky. Well, eating more than you should, sleeping more than one should, mating more than one should, and defending more than one should is troublesome and risky. The word itihasa, history, and puratana, old, indicate that although a living entity lives within the material body, the history of the living entity within the material body is very old. In this regard, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sang Anadi Karma Phale Padi Bavar Nava Jade Tali Bare Na Deki Upaya. Due to my past fruitive activities, I have fallen into the water of material existence, and I cannot find any way to get out of it. Every living entity is suffering in this material existence from past activities. Therefore, everyone has a very old history. Foolish material scientists have manufactured their own theories of evolution, which are simply concerned with the material body. But actually, this is not the real evolution. The real evolution is the history of the living entity who is Puranjana, living within the body. Sri Narada Muni will explain this evolutionary theory in a different way for the understanding of sane persons. Oh boy, I can't wait to read this now. My dear king, once in the past lived a king named Puranjana, who was celebrated for his great activities. He had a friend named Avigyata, the unknown one. That means Krishna. No one could understand the activities of Avigyata. Purport. Every living entity is Puranjana. The word Puran means within this body. Every living entity is supposed to be the king of his body because the living entity is given full freedom to use his body as he likes. He usually engages his body for sense gratification because one who is in the bodily conception of life feels that the ultimate goal of life is to serve the senses. This is the process of karma kanda, the way to get entangled more and more in the what you call in the entanglement of karma. One who has no inner knowledge, who does not know that he is actually the spirit soul living within the body, who is simply enamored by the dictation of the senses, is called a materialist. See, that word dictation of the senses is very profound. We have different senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and our senses become what you would call enamored, or they become attracted by nice foods, nice women, nice houses, nice cars, nice everything, and they think that that's the real purpose of life, to have all these things and to enjoy them in sense gratification. Well, these things can also be, or also be in Krishna consciousness, but with the purpose of pleasing the Lord, not the purpose of pleasing one's senses. So, what is the difference? Well, the difference is understanding who is the proprietor. The karmi thinks that he is the proprietor and he can take advantage of matter for his own sense gratification. But the devotee thinks that everything belongs to Krishna, and therefore he must use everything in the service of Krishna. That's the biggest, let's say, uh, difference between the so-called karmi and the so-called devotee. The karmi will use everything in his own service for his own sense gratification, or for his family, or for his nation, etc. And the devotee will engage in devotional activities to please the Lord. and live a very simple and frugal life, not engaging in overindulgences. So here it says, one who has no inner knowledge, who does not know that he is actually the spirit soul living within the body, who is simply enamored by the dictation of the senses, is called a materialist. A materialist person interested in sense gratification can be called Puranjana, okay, because such a interested, uh, uh, such a such a interested in sense gratification can be called Puranjana. I'm sorry, because such a materialistic person utilizes his senses according to his whims, whatever comes into his mind. He may also be called a king. An irresponsible king takes the royal position to be his personal property and misuses his treasury for sense gratification. The word brihak sharva is also significant. The word sharva means fame. The living entity is famous from ancient times. For, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.20, Najayate Mriyate Va Kadachin. The living entity is never born and never dies. 2.20, Najayate Mriyate Va. The living entity is never born and never dies. Because he is eternal, his activities are internal, although they are performed in different types of bodies. Na hanyate hanyamane sarire. He does not die even after the annihilation of the body. Thus, the living entity transmigrates from one body to another and performs various activities. In each body, the living entity performs so many acts. Sometimes he becomes a great hero, just like Hiranyakashipu or Kamsa, or in the modern age, Napoleon or Hitler. The activities of such men are certainly very great, but as soon as their bodies are finished, everything else is finished. Then they remain in name only. Therefore, a living entity may be called Grihach Charva. He may have a great reputation for various types of activities. Nonetheless, he has a friend whom he does not know. That's the super soul. The materialistic persons do not understand that God is present as the super soul, who is situated within the heart of every living entity. Although the Paramatma sits beside the Jivatma as a friend, the Jivatma, or the living entity, does not know it. Consequently, he is described as avidyata saka, meaning one who has an unknown friend. The word avigyata, chestita, is also significant because a living entity works hard under the direction of the Paramatma and is carried away by the laws of nature. Nonetheless, he thinks himself independent of God, independent of the stringent laws of material nature. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.24, Achedyo yam madayo yam aklidyo susya evacha nitya sarvagata stanur achalo yam sanatana. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, all pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. The living entity is Sanatana, meaning eternal. Because he cannot be killed by any weapon, burnt into ashes by fire, soaked or moistened by water, or dried up by air. He is considered to be immune to material reactions. Although he is changing bodies, he is not affected by the material conditions. He is placed under the material conditions and he acts accordingly to the directions of his friend, the supersoul, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.15. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivisto matak smritir jnanam apahanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Thus, the Lord, as Paramatma, is situated in everyone's heart, and he gives directions to the living entity to act in whatever way the living entity desires. In this life and in his previous lives, the living entity does not know that the Lord is giving him the chance to fulfill all kinds of desires. No one can fulfill any desire without the sanction of the Lord. All the facilities given by the Lord are unknown to the conditioned soul. Okay, I think we will stop right there. These are very profound statements, especially Sarvasya Chaham Hridisane Visto Matak Smritir Jnanam Apahanam Cha. Krishna says, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Thus, the Lord, as Paramatma, is situated in everyone's heart, and he gives directions to the living entity to act in whatever way the living entity desires. In this life and in his previous lives, the living entity does not know that the Lord is giving him a chance to fulfill all kinds of desires. No one can fulfill any desire without the sanction of the Lord. All the facilities given by the Lord are unknown to the conditioned soul. Oh, well, that's definitely true. But when one becomes a devotee, he understands that the super soul in the heart is actually giving direction to him. But when he doesn't heed the instructions of the super soul, he becomes entangled in the laws of karma and unnecessarily suffers. But if he takes instruction from the super soul or from the spiritual master, he becomes free of all this unnecessary suffering and can go back to Godhead very easily in this lifetime by engaging always in devotional service and being free of all sense gratification. Well, even when you eat prasadam, it's a type of sense gratification, but it's done under the direction of Krishna. In other words, you are eating only what is recommended by the Lord. And the whole idea of eating is to have strength to engage in devotional service. It's not to engage in better sex or better hard work for making more money. So we have to learn all these things by carefully reading the Shastras, as we're doing now, and understanding what is real and what is not real. Sarvashichaham hridisanivisto matak smritir jnanam apahanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Thus, the Lord is Paramatma, situated in everyone's heart, and he gives directions to the living entity to act in whatever way the living entity desires. Okay, now we understand how dangerous it is to have the wrong desires. Krishna will help you to attain your wrong desires and get completely entangled in karma and suffer unnecessarily. So we have to be very, very careful what we're desiring and who we are praying to. We should always pray to Krishna free us from illusion and not fall down under the influence of Maya. That should be our prayer. Okay, I think we'll stop right there. Are there any questions or comments? Any questions?
Harivilas Maharaj, Dandavat. This is Madhav Priya.
Hare Krishna Mate.
Yes, Maharaj, I always enjoy it, and it's so amazing to hear you every day in the morning and evening. Just thank you so much for that. I just wanted to make that comment. And also the concept of soul, when they do that Thanksgiving dinner with the turkeys, I've heard from a lot of Christians that they don't believe that the animals have a soul. That's why they don't feel bad in butchering them.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. That started very long ago.
Yes.
There's a history of how the so-called Christians
Uh-huh.
came to the conclusion that animals don't have a soul, or if they
Yeah.
have a soul, it's inferior to the human soul. Therefore,
Mhm.
they can eat them. Go ahead.
Yes. I try to explain that every living entity has a soul, So everyone is a spark of Krishna, but it's hard for them to grasp that concept because they're just so adamant about believing that animals don't have soul.
Well, they have to adamantly believe that an animal doesn't have a soul so that they can kill the animal and eat it.
Yes. Yes.
So that's called a false narrative that's created in order to have sense gratification.
Yeah.
But if you have the truth, then you're not going to kill an animal and eat it. On the other hand, you'll probably protect the animal. Just like we're protecting Radhika. We're not going to
Yes.
kill Radhika and eat her. And she
Yes.
knows that. Therefore, she feels very, very safe in the association of devotees.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna Dandavat.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Okay,
Thank
we'll stop right there for the time being. Pick it up now, 11 hours from now. And
Are there other comments or questions?
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Danvat Pranam. Can I have the permission to ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, Maharaj, you said that even if bad thoughts come in our mind, Krishna allows that. He is our unknown friend. He allows that bad thoughts to come. It's on of any bad karma we do. It's only by the power which Krishna gives us. So, and you also said that we shouldn't be doing that, because if we do that, then we get entangled by Maya and we suffer eternally. So I have been trying to find a answer to this question, that why are we suffering eternally when we were originally a spark of Krishna, when we were originally in the spiritual world? So we fell down because we were envious of Krishna. So why we became envious of Krishna? Because we had the free will. So if we are in a perfect place, in a perfect situation, why does that imperfection come in our free will, that we become envious of Krishna and then we want to enjoy like Krishna? Why did I keep asking myself, why did I get that thought, that feeling? What motivated me to get that? And if I'm in a perfect place, why should such imperfection come? Why did I think like this way? That's why I'm down in the material world again, So why did that imperfection come? Why was I not happy in the spiritual world? Why was I envious? So maybe then I think maybe it's Krishna's Leela, maybe it's for his pastime. I don't know. I'm confused. So if you could just guide me, please.
Well, we are, okay, the problem is that we have limited free will. In other words, everybody has limited free will. Why do we say limited free will? Because you only have two choices. Either you follow Krishna or you reject Krishna. So you have the ability to do either way, go either way. And some people, unfortunately, desire to reject Krishna and engage in a life of sense gratification. And obviously, they get away with it for some time, but eventually, karma catches up to them and they suffer terribly for going the wrong way. So, Krishna is not going to stop you from engaging in sinful activities, because if he stops you, then you would not, let's say, be happy or so called happy. You would be controlled. So, in order to have love, there has to be freedom. You cannot make people robots, then there's no love. So, therefore, we have limited free will and we can exercise it. We can exercise it to reject Krishna, or we can exercise it to love Krishna. Therefore, there can be love. But if we are forced to love Krishna, then we're robots and there's no love. So, someone would say, well, look, why is God making women so pretty? And, it's not my fault that I'm attracted to them. Why did God make them so pretty? Well, it's not God's fault. The point is that we have limited free will. And if we use it correctly, then we are liberated. And if we incorrectly make decisions due to our limited free will, we get entangled. So we have to be very careful when we have free will. We're not completely free, but we have limited free will. And if it's misused, we get entangled. And if it's used correctly, we make spiritual advancement. Otherwise, we would become robots, forced to act in certain ways by the power of the Lord. But that's not what Krishna wants. He wants us to love him. You can't love someone if you're a robot. So therefore, we have limited free will. We can either accept Krishna or reject Krishna. That's the limits of our free will. If we accept Krishna and follow his instructions, we attain genuine love and devotion for the Lord, and the Lord also is very happy because he wants to reciprocate with such a devotee. But if we reject Krishna and engage in sense gratification, well, we have that opportunity. And there are consequences. Uh, it's just like a thief. He steals something and he gets away with it. But 10 years later, the law catches up to him, and now he has to suffer for what he did. So, in the same way, we can commit sinful activities and seem as if we can get away with it for so many years, but eventually the karma catches up to us and we have to suffer. So, therefore, because we have limited free will, we have to be very careful as adult human beings. We have to understand how the laws of material nature are acting and therefore not violate these laws of material nature. That is, always engaging in devotional service, always staying under the tutelage of genuine devotees, always chanting Hare Krishna and having prasadam, and not being enamored by Maya's enticements. Maya will entice people, and if they have that weakness of not being serious about following Krishna consciousness, they become enamored by Maya and they fall down. Therefore, we have to be very, very careful as devotees not to be attracted by anything in the material world. We should be attracted only by the beauty of Krishna and his devotees. So everything depends on how we see things. So a devotee sees things as belonging to Krishna, and a karmi sees things potentially as belonging to him. That's the difference between a devotee and a materialist or a karmi. So a devotee understands everything belongs to Krishna. Therefore, that understanding leads to the conviction that I should use everything only in the service of Krishna. But if I come up with the false idea that everything may belong to me if I work hard, etc., then we become a karmi, a materialist, a person who uses material things for his own sense gratification, and we get trapped by karma, and it's actually suffering. So we have limited free will. Sometimes people say, well, why did God do that? Why didn't he just make us like robots to follow him? Well, yeah, then there would be no love. But because we have limited free will, if we exercise it properly, then there is love and devotion for Krishna, which is what Krishna wants. He doesn't want robots. He wants people that actually love him. But to actually love someone, you have to have freedom. So that's why Krishna gives us limited free will. We can either accept Krishna or reject Krishna. That is our limit of free will. Okay, Hare Krishna. Our takeaway today is Sarva Sichaham Hridi Sanivisto Matak Smritir Jnanam Apahanam Sha. Krishna says, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Thus, and that's the end of the quote. Thus, the Lord, as Paramatma, is situated in everyone's heart, and he gives directions to the living entity to act in whatever way the living entity desires. In this life and in his previous lives, the living entity does not know that the Lord is giving him a chance to fulfill all kinds of desires. No one can fulfill any desire without the sanction of the Lord. All the facilities given by the Lord are unknown to the conditioned soul. Well, that is, as long as the conditioned soul is conditioned by illusory things. But if we become educated in Krishna consciousness, we will not make the mistake of thinking everything is potentially open for my enjoyment. Everything belongs to Krishna. Therefore, everything should be used in the service of Krishna. That is the conviction of a genuine devotee. And as long as a devotee is thinking like that, he'll not be tricked by the tricks of karma. I'm sorry, by the tricks of Maya, to think that he is the proprietor, he is the enjoyer, he is the supreme God. So everything depends on how we see things. A mother sees her child with love and protection, and the child molester sees the child as an object of sense gratification for himself. So, two people looking at the same thing have different understandings. It requires education by associating with genuine devotees to completely become free from all illusory concepts so that we do not commit sinful activities. But if we avoid the association of devotees, then we'll become enamored by sinful concepts and engage in sinful activities, thinking that we can get away with them. So one time there was this devotee, and he cheated on his wife. And then his wife found out about it. And then she, really got angry and made his life hellish. So I asked him, I said, Prabhu, why did you do this? You have such a nice wife. And she was, serving you so nicely. And he said, I thought I could get away with it. I thought I could get away with it. How many people in this world think I thought I could get away with it?
All the criminals.
No one could get away with anything. Krishna is in the heart. He knows everything that we're doing. So therefore, we shouldn't think we can get away with something, because Krishna is the super soul in our heart. He knows everything we're doing, everything we're desiring. Once we understand that, then we can clearly understand we can't get away with anything. But someone has to forget that, or someone has to ignore that in order to engage in sinful activities. So I pray, and I hope all of you pray, never to forget that Krishna is in our heart and is the super soul and knows everything we're desiring and everything we have done. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nobody can get away with anything.
Hare Krishna, any other, it's already time, but I just wanted to see if there is any burning question, otherwise we'll wait till tomorrow. Okay. See you